What's up, Ranger Nation? It's your boy Jerome. I'm here today with a review for Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel, episode number 16, I believe. And this episode is titled Car Troubles. So yeah, it's number 16. So we are almost done with this season. Have 4 more episodes left, plus the Halloween episode and the Christmas episode, which I think we might get I don't know when we're going to get the Halloween episode, if that's going to be next Saturday or the following Saturday. But like I said, we're 4 episodes away from the end of the season, and we're getting a little bit closer to Power Rangers Beast Morphers, which I'm really super duper excited about. Alright, so this episode, it started out with the monster named Voltipede. He comes down to Earth, and what he's doing is he's draining electricity from, vehicles and all that kind of stuff to power himself up. So while he's, draining the electricity from the vehicles, we get Victor and Monty. They are out in the park. They are running. They're trying to test some, whatever they were trying to test for Monty and all that kind of stuff. Not Monty, but Victor. And while they're doing whatever they're doing, they get caught up in the electricity field that Voltipede was doing, which, Voltipede didn't get the energy because that was the last of the energy from the vehicles on that street they were on. And it actually ended up powering up Victor. And we found out it powered up Victor because he touched Monty and he sent an electrical current through Monty. So, when it comes down to Victor and Monty, I don't understand those two. Because, you would think you would see over the course of Power Rangers Ninja Steel and Super Ninja Steel, you'd think that you would see an evolution, a change in those two characters, but they are still the same two people that we saw from the first episode to now. And I'm like, are these two ever going to grow up? Are they going to stop being so childish? And Victor, with his need for wanting to be number one and all that kind of stuff, are we ever going to get away from that? But so far, like I said, we're 4 episodes away from the series finale, and it's not looking too bright on that end. All right, and then we have Calvin. He notices that there is a lady on the side of the road who's having car trouble. So, Calvin goes to the woman and he asks her, are you having car trouble? And she's like, yeah, but I've already called a mechanic. And, Calvin's like, well, I have a little time before I have to go to school and all that kind of stuff. So Calvin looks at her car, and then he tells her, what is wrong with her car. And while he's telling her what's wrong with her car, up walks the mechanic, and they say the same thing at the same exact time. And then, the mechanic thinks that Calvin is an actual working mechanic, but Calvin's like, no, I'm actually, and he tells him he's Joe from Joe's towing and all that kind of stuff, and he says, I'm Calvin from the high school and all that kind of stuff, and that takes him by surprise that he's only in high school, but he's able to know what's wrong with that car and all that kind of stuff. So then Calvin gets a job offer from Joe to work full time with him. So then Calvin goes to school. He's telling the other Rangers, that he met Joe, and that Joe offered him a full-time job, and how he's not gonna stick with school anymore, that he's done. And then everybody's trying to talk him out of doing that, because Halo's like, you're not even anywhere near close to being finished with school. And Preston said something, I forgot what Preston said exactly, but Calvin is like, this is my dream to be an actual mechanic and all that kind of stuff. And I really like this episode because it had a message behind it, and I'm gonna actually get to that message towards the end of the video, but it really was a good message. And then, Calvin gets a phone call from Joe saying that the phone calls have been off the hook because, people are having so much issues with their cars, mainly because Voltipede is draining all the electricity from their cars, but they don't know that at this point. So, he tells them that he has to go, and he just basically asks his friends just to support what he wants to do, and they agree to support Calvin, with what he wants to do. All right, so then you have Calvin and Joe. They are going to a group of people who are all having issues with their cars. Again, it's the same issue. Voltipede is draining their energy from their cars and all that kind of stuff. And, Calvin is actually really, really happy about doing this because, again, this is something that he really wants to do. He's happy to be working on his cars. So then, Calvin and Joe split up to go take care of the people's cars. So then you have the Rangers. They are training in about outside of the base and all that kind of stuff. And then Calvin shows up late. He apologizes about that. And, basically telling the Rangers that, it's kind of odd that every car that they worked on had the same exact issue. And then, Mick asked Calvin, well, is that common for Earth cars? And he says, not really, and all that kind of stuff. And then Mick says, well, this sounds like a bit of a pattern. And, he's kind of wondering what's causing this issue and all that kind of stuff. And Calvin is like, what? I'll ask Joe tomorrow if he because we're going to go work on some more cars tomorrow. So I'll ask Joe what he thinks and all that kind of stuff. So then the Rangers go back to training and all that kind of stuff. All right, so then the next morning they go to work on some more cars, and again these cars have the same issue that the other ones that they worked on had. And Calvin wants to figure out what's going on and what's causing this and all this kind of stuff. But Joe is on the whole thing of, I'm just a mechanic and my job is just to fix the cars, not try to figure out what's the root cause and all that kind of stuff. So then while they're working on one of the cars, Voltipede comes back down to Earth, and he's draining the electricity from the vehicle that Joe's tow truck. And Joe sees Voltipede and he takes off running. Calvin stays behind and he morphs into action to fight Voltipede. So while he's fighting Voltipede, he realizes, you're the reason why all these cars, have the electrical issues that they're having. So then Calvin takes off running and he kind of hides so they can call for backup. So he calls the Rangers and he tells the Rangers, there's a monster on Earth, and Mick was right that there was more to it. So when he tells the Rangers to come to Earth, come down to help him, he tells them to bring backup because this is a strong monster and all that kind of stuff. So while Calvin is fighting Voltipede, because Voltipede actually found Calvin because there was a mirror in the background and it showed Calvin and all that kind of stuff. So Calvin is fighting him, and while he's fighting Voltipede, the Line Fire Zord is in the air and it strikes Voltipede. So when it strikes Voltipede, all the other Rangers show up, and then Voltipede actually hit the Line Fire Zord and it took it out of commission, and the Line Fire Zord actually crashed and damaged it. So then the Rangers take out their battle morphers and blast Voltipede one more time, and then this time Voltipede has to retreat back because he used up all his energy taking out the Lion Fire Zord and all that kind of stuff. So then the Rangers get a call from Mick telling them that there's a high amount of voltage energy at the high school and how they need to check it out. And then Preston brings up the Lion Fire Zord and all that kind of stuff. And Mick is like, what? I'll look into the Lion Fire Zord. You guys go to the high school and check out what's going on there. And Calvin is like, what, Mick? Let me go check out the Lion Fire Zord and all that kind of stuff. And Mick at first said no because, the Lion Fire Zord is so complex that he doesn't feel like Calvin will be able to do it. But then Calvin once again begs him to let him go do that. So, Mick says, what? It's all yours. So then the Rangers split up. You got Levi, Brody, Preston, Haley, and Sarah. They go to the high school, and Calvin goes to fix the Lion Fire Zord. All right, so then we got Calvin. He is at the Lion Fire Megazord, and he goes into the Lion Fire Megazord, and then he's looking around, and he has no idea where to go first. So then he calls Mick and tells Mick that, what, you were right, that this Zord is a little bit too complex for me. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm in here right now, and I don't know where to begin and where to start. So while he's calling Mick, Mick comes down from the sky, and Mick's like, what were you saying? And basically, Calvin tells him, what, you were correct. I don't know what I'm doing. So then Mick, says, we'll start here, and we'll work our way around. And while they start to work on the Zord, Calvin asks Mick, how do you know so much about the Zord? And this is where Mick told Calvin, I was stayed in school till I graduated, and I learned all that I could learn about everything. And then, I guess a light bulb went off in Calvin's head, which was the message of this episode. Just because, you feel like you know a lot about one thing, you can be good. You can be good at one particular thing, but then there are other things that you might not know anything about, or you might not know a whole lot about. So I did like the message of this episode, that just because you are good at one thing, it doesn't mean that you can't be good at something else, or even limit yourself. Stay in it to win it. I think that's what Preston said earlier. You stay in it to win it. So, like I said, actually the moral of the message was stay in school and don't think that just because a good opportunity comes along that you should just jump on that. And even if you do jump on that, here's the thing. Even if Calvin had, said, hey, what I would think is, since Calvin is in high school, stay in school. You can work for Joe part-time and still, work on cars, but then you can also take the time to learn other stuff about other, it doesn't necessarily have to be cars. It can be buses, trains, airplanes, anything that has an engine running in it. You can, motorcycles, all that kind of stuff. Just stay in school, like work for Joe part-time, but then also stay in school and learn, get as much knowledge as you can so that you can be a better mechanic. That, you don't want to be just an average mechanic, be better than expected when it comes to that kind of stuff. All right, and then you have the Rangers. They are at the school and they don't really see anything at this point, so they head to the base. And then you have once again Victor and Monty. They are there, and Monty is telling Victor that the video that they shot and put online was taken down. And then there's this guy with a newspaper in front of his face. He's covered up, and he says, "I'm the one that took it down," and all that kind of stuff. And then he reveals himself as Agent Sven. And he basically he's telling Victor and Monty that he has a mission for them, and that he needs proof that Victor has limitless electricity inside of him and all that kind of stuff. So then the janitor was about to clean the floor and all that kind of stuff. And then Victor goes over there and tells him no need to plug in. And Victor takes off his gloves that he had on and put his hands on it. And then he just goes zooming around the school. And I'm like, I don't know. Like I said, when it comes down to Victor and Monty, I can tolerate them, but up to a certain extent. Like, I think I say this in every video that I do. Victor and Monty they do work my nerves, and I think I get what they were trying to do with Victor and Monty. I think the goal for Victor and Monty was to be comedic relief, but I think they were also supposed to kind of somewhat remind us of Bulk and Skull. But to me, Bulk and Skull were likable, whereas Victor and Monty to me are just not likable at all, and it's more so Victor that's not likable because Victor is cocky, he's egomaniac and all that kind of stuff. That's what makes it not likable for me with Victor. Because even when it came to Bulk and Skull season 1 through 2, season 1 through 2 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Bulk and Skull, you loved them, but you love to hate both of them. But then as the seasons progressed, season 1 through 2, they were the bullies of the show. You liked them when you saw them get like when they would try to get into it with the Rangers, and you like to see the stuff that happened to them. And then seasons 3 through Turbo, actually, they really completely changed and they became better people and all that kind of stuff. And that's what I think I would have liked to have saw with Victor and Monty. I know this is a 2-season show, but I would have liked to at least saw some kind of a progression, some kind of change with those two over this 2-year time frame. Alright, so then we have Voltipede. He is at the power plant and he is draining the electricity from the power plant. So back at the base, the Rangers are trying to find Voltipede, but they can't find him and all that kind of stuff. And then, they tried to find him using the high voltage stuff, which ended up taking out the power and all that kind of stuff. And then, Calvin comes back to the base, telling them that the Lion Fire Zord is complete and all that kind of stuff. And then, he basically tells the Rangers how the Rangers were praising him and all that kind of stuff. And then he didn't take all the credit for it. He actually thanked Mick because Mick was the one who helped him by telling him that, he stayed in school to learn all that he could learn. And I guess that's helping Calvin. So the Rangers, are heading toward the power plant. And as they're heading toward the power plant, they are intercepted by Voltipede. And they morph into action to fight Voltipede. So then you have the Rangers split up. You have the original 5 fighting Voltipede, and you have, because Voltipede called on the Basher Bots to come down to Earth to fight. So you have the original 5 fighting Voltipede, and you have Levi fighting the Basher Bots. So actually, when after they morphed, they called on the Fusion Star, and Voltipede zapped the Fusion Star out of Brody's hand and all that kind of stuff. So the Rangers start to fight Voltipede, and they're actually winning fighting Voltipede. And then Calvin asked Brody for the Lion Fire armor, star, and he transforms into the Lion Fire Yellow Ranger. And he's fighting Voltipede, and they ended up defeating Voltipede. And then once they defeat Voltipede, they start to walk off, and then you have Tynamon on Earth, and he picks up the Fusion Star, and he zaps himself back to the Warrior Dome. So back on the Warrior Dome, Cosmo, he gigantifies Voltipede. Voltipede grows, and the Rangers call it on the line the Ninja Blaze Megazord. So they start to fight Voltipede. They knock him down, and then Voltipede extends himself and wraps himself around the Zord, and they're all tied up. And then Calvin calls on the Lion Fire Zord, and it blasts Voltipede, freeing the Rangers. And then the Rangers use their final attack to destroy Voltipede. And then lastly, we have Victor and Monty with Agent Sven. So they go to the power plant. Victor once again takes off the gloves and he powers back up the city. Now, once he powers back up the city, this actually drains him of his energy because he touches Agent Sven, and Agent Sven didn't get an electrical vote. And that's when they figure out that, he has no more energy and all that kind of stuff. And Victor wants to know if he can still work on his secret mission with Agent Sven. And Agent Sven tells them to look in the distance, and he takes off running and leaves them in the dust. So then we move back over to the Rangers base. The Rangers are all there, and Joe shows up to get Calvin to come to work with him. And then Calvin tells him basically that he's going to stick, this is his dream job, but at the end of the day, he has to do what's best for him, and what's going to be best for him is actually to stay in school and to learn more about other things besides just cars, so that he can be a better mechanic when it comes down to the time for him to be a mechanic. So then we go back to the Warrior Dome, and Tynamon is on the Warrior Dome, and he presents Madame Odious with the Fusion Star, and she's happy to have this Fusion Star because this is going to be a way for her to get at the Rangers. So that was the episode. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys later.